There is no such thing as 100% certainty. And that can feel absolutely terrifying. And with that being the case, how do you move forward with that? How do you live in a world where certainty isn't guaranteed? That's what we're going to dive into today in this episode.
And to that end, let's be careful with insane access that we have to media nowadays. Let's be very careful what we anchor our nervous systems to, because anchoring it to something that is constantly volatile, up and down, honestly, it's not the optimal thing.
Hey, everybody, it's Bianca.
Welcome back, Evolvers. It's Amelia, and today we are entering into this episode. Like I said just before we got started, there's no right way to go about doing this episode, and I want to just pull our listeners behind the scenes a little bit as we share for episode 475, Living Without Certainty, How to Stay Grounded When the Future Feels Not Only Uncertain, but Unsafe. We are there with you. And one of the things that we hear time and time again, especially this week that we're recording of this episode, which today is January 10th. So happy February to every one of you. And during this week, there's been a lot of things that have been going on in our entire world. And one could say, yeah, Amelia, that happens every single day. And this is so true, right? There's drama wherever you look. There is chaos wherever you look. And also there is calmness in certain pockets, in certain areas, and how you're engaging with the world right now, living without certainty, especially when the future feels unsafe, is something that is happening on a human global level. And so we feel it too. We understand what that feels like to our own degree. And if you're someone that is recognizing your nervous system going into this hyper overdrive or this tracking of current events or whatnot. First of all, I want you to know we understand that that is not, a flag of that something's wrong with you. That is something that actually showcases how functional your nervous system actually is. And to this episode, let's have a dialogue, and we welcome your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what you're doing as an evolver to navigate the uncertainty that is ahead and that is in your world right now. So by the end of this episode, we hope to, as an Evolve community, really share some of the things that Bianca and I are honestly doing to not only feel sane, but also to stay calm amongst chaos and trying to figure out and navigate what is happening in our world right now. So
before we jumped in, you said that you've had a lot of clients over the last couple of weeks really processing with you everything that's been going on in the world and their fears and the uncertainty of what to do, how to navigate, how to move forward. And I definitely have too. I mean, I have a client who he and his wife are in the process of moving to Canada because of everything that's going on in the United States and their fears about it and their concerns of what is to come. And this conversation is not a political conversation. We are not here to tell anyone they should believe one thing or another politically. This conversation is no matter who you are, where you are, what you are. Life is going to have massive and radical bouts of uncertainty, and we are in a time of significant uncertainty right now for, the time frame that we're in. And what do you do? Because you can't shut it out. You can't bunker yourself in a hole and avoid the world and run away from it. But you also can't be completely and utterly consumed by it and overly invested in it to the point where it's sabotaging your ability to function. So, Amelia, what have been the conversations that you've been having with clients around, how to help them feel safe, how to help them get grounded, and maybe let's give voice to some of people's concerns. Like what are the concerns that people are coming to us to, so we can help our listeners feel like it's not just them? And then how have you been kind of sitting there with those clients? Like, what are you telling them? What are we doing?
Yeah, so I actually really do want to focus on this episode of giving voice to that, because one of the things that I do know that is what I am hearing and experiencing behind the scenes with clients is the fact that it's so easy. It's so easy to feel alone in what your nervous system is doing when you hear about current events, when you actually experience them firsthand, when they directly impact your world. And it's not just something on your own news feed. It's not something in the podcast that you listen to. It's not popping up on your Facebook or your Instagram or your quote unquote platforms that depict the news, right? And it like things are happening, and they will. And a lot of clients that I have been speaking to this week, kind of a couple different buckets. So I have, just kind of to parse out, I have the business owner that has customers coming in wanting to chat about current events and how that's going to impact the distribution chain of products that this business, this retail location services. There are the single moms that have relatives whom are immigrants, and they're concerned about what's happening in this world at large and what might happen, quote unquote, in their world. We have other clients who are staunch advocates of I guess the word is, how do you put words to some of this stuff? Seriously,
Kind of feels
like
impossible, right? Like,
yeah. It's like who might not be quote unquote directly affected, but are activated to try, like really want to make sure that they go do their part to advocate for people who don't have quote unquote the white privilege per se. We have clients who have their colleagues talking about events at work, and thereby these people, because of who they have married and who they're planning a future with, are terrified about what they should or should not say about what they really feel when it comes to the work setting and some policies that are being impacted at their workplace, or even just the roundtables at lunch. I have early 20-year-olds who are looking upwards at their life and in sheer terror and confusion at what jobs are actually possible and available to them, given the increase of technology, AI, the overlap of that, plus the structures that are in place socially. Students who are wanting to go back to school, but now have a but in there and are reconsidering. There's families who, like your client, who have never had to think about immigrating somewhere or leaving a country, and are now having serious conversations and dialogues about that. And all of those voices, and I could keep going, right? I could keep going. One of them also is the gender-based violence that's happening online. towards women and the concern about sharing what you want to share and have it feel safe, that someone's not going to exploit your images into a pornographic film. Just the amount of things that have come into the fold in the last week of concerns to where their nervous systems are activated in a way that they've never literally had it activated before. It is challenging us all, and I say us, not just practitioners, but communities and social support systems, to really evaluate and reevaluate our values, our belief systems, how we're able to, from a nervous system, hold the grief, the challenge, the shift, the uncertainty, the fear, the unsafety, the this, that, the other thing, while also trying to hear someone that you are biologically connected with or someone that you really care about, while also holding your own concerns. And what I'm hearing kind of as a through line and as a pattern is there's a lot of uncertainty, but the biggest concern is that there's a competing concern of safety and uncertainty, and there's not as much rationality in the mix. And why I say that is because very few of said clients, and honestly, this is not just a clients, I'm also hearing about families and colleagues and clients that are coming, like a lot of different people and subsets of communities, and the emotions and the emotional appeal of how this world is kind of unfolding, how that's actually sending a lot of nervous systems into either extreme sympathetic activation, for example, like a fight type aggressive mentality, and shifting their worldviews and personal beliefs about themselves and belief about other people so drastically and dramatically, and just it's like whiplash on their nervous systems is how they describe it. And then I'm also seeing a through line of a complete inability and a wild underdevelopment of trying to see a bigger picture, trying to see through the noise with rational, objective, statistical based thinking. And that just amplifies the quote unquote flames that they're feeling in their nervous system.
How do you do that when you're so dysregulated? And number one, you've never really developed the skill of being able to do that. But number two, the things that are going on are escalated to such a degree to where it almost feels impossible.
Well, one of the things that is actually a very scary truth that makes it worse is that based on the latest neuroscience that we have, if you feel unsafe and if your nervous system is dysregulated, you're actually not able to access that quote unquote part of your brain. And I think it's really concerning because the way in which the brain, right, we're animalistic quote unquote creatures that have developed these higher cortical level of thinking in our brain. Meaning that our nervous system, the way in which our brain has the control center of our nervous system and how we interpret this world, the way it redirects blood flow is based on if we have a threat or perceived uncertainty or perceived unsafety, our brain is going to track that and prioritize that out of our own self-preservation of our species, of our biological system, right? We don't want to die. And our brain is organized such that the blood flow is going to go there if we have a perception of threat, unsafety, uncertainty, etc. It's not going to prioritize the rational, logical, statistical, bigger lens of thinking, quote unquote, that you need blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the neocortex, the different parts of the brain that help to access thinking that isn't quote unquote anchored in emotions. And so that's what's really scary about it, because when you're in that dysregulated standpoint, it actually, I mean, I'll go ahead and say it's impossible to do so, because of literally the blood flow in our brain is trying to make sure that we have enough blood flow in our amygdala and our lower level cortical based thinking, quote unquote, components of our brains, so that we are ready to go flee, fight, fawn, freeze. Like our brain is going into this overdrive of reallocating blood flow so that we literally do not access that type of thinking. So,
but then those parts of the brain actually start getting bigger too, because that's what's getting fed so often. So when that's
100%.
what's getting fed as often as it is, those regions are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it's requiring less stimulus to create a response. So over time, you're just getting very triggered and activated by lesser and lesser and lesser stimulus. So you're just now constantly on threat, consistently on alert and ready to dive in and act, and your emotions are now even more ready to escalate.
Yeah, it's like they're primed. It's like they're your brain is on its metaphorical trigger of I'm going to say it like a squirt gun, right? Because it's already ready to dispel the quote unquote water from the water gun, right? That's like one way to think about it. Whereas when we're regulated, we take that metaphorical finger off the trigger and we put the quote unquote squirt gun down, right? Like our brain is, when we're constantly living in uncertainty, and then we have systems or habits like picking up our phone and going to social media, and then our algorithm, we're like getting all this exposure to so much news and sliced media, and there is so much in that level of exposure. And I said this many episodes ago now, we are not emotionally ready to handle and cope with the future. And the future is here. And the future that is being painted on many people's screens is a very dark one. We have never seen quote unquote darker times. People who have died in the last year or so that are in their late 90s, Jane Goodall being one of them, are literally referring to and being asked and interviewed about this time, right? 2025, 2026. RIP, she passed in 2025, but like for her, for example, she's seen a world for 90 plus years, and she was being interviewed about this time, and she said, these are very dark times, right? And of course that's from her perspective, but she has a far more global perspective than a lot of people that are sitting in their apartments and then going to work and then going back to their apartment and then going to work. And so I'm not going to invalidate that. And one of the things that the conversations that I have with clients is I'm not going to invalidate what your experience is. You're literally feeling unsafe because you are getting exposure to things that are happening within your community, within your country, within your family systems that have never happened before. And certainly the stories that, if they have happened, have not been passed down such that it's top and fresh in your mind. It's been epigenetically passed down, the traumas and the atrocities that have happened in your family lineage. But maybe those stories aren't necessarily told by your grandparents anymore. And so though the biggest thing that we can do as a community, I know, is to help. Instead of what I hear from my clients is, when I try to go and talk about it to my partner, or when I try to go talk about how I'm feeling about whatever it is, or about my interpretations, or about what I'm seeing, the people that I'm trying to talk to are already on edge. And so me even opening my mouth about what I'm experiencing or what I'm noticing, their squirt gun is going, for lack of better words. They don't have capacity to hold the nervous system that I'm coming to them with, because their nervous system is already in overload. And so what usually happens is either they shut down and it becomes this kind of conflict of some sort, Or someone tries to take my problem and then go solve it because that's their quote unquote default, which in reality, the problem that I'm experiencing is not quote unquote a problem that's just solved one and done. Cool. Yeah, I could put my phone away. I could bury my head in what is happening around me. But then when my kids ask me, why didn't you do anything then? I also have to talk to them about, well, I couldn't emotionally handle what I was going through and what our communities were going through. And so I decided to just bury myself and remove the quote unquote stimulus. So those conversations are happening. And so I think the first place I want to, if there's any practitioners that are listening to this episode, really encouraging them to make sure that their nervous systems are tended to and manicured so that we can hold these spaces of safety for a moment, even if it's for an hour for our clients. And for the clients in the Evolve community that's listening to this, I've never been more focused as a practitioner on making sure that my nervous system can hold you in my entire life. And there are people that are incapable of doing that. There are people that are overloaded right now in their nervous system and have no idea how to hold what you are going through. And I think that, Bianca, that is one of my biggest concerns because like you said at the very beginning, things are always going to be happening. We just now have access to what's happening around the world with a click of a finger.
More than ever before. And that's why it seems scarier and darker, even though like to my awareness, I think like 80 million people died in World War II, something like that. People weren't recording videos of the soldiers on the front lines murdering each other. So like, yeah, there've been like quote unquote darker times, but the access that we are getting, the things that we are seeing, what's just popping up in the palm of your hands on a daily basis was never meant for our eyes and for our brain to see. This is outside of the scope of normal human experiences, and it makes sense that you feel triggered. In the diagnostic and statistical manual, so the DSM, which is it's the large book that basically underlines and defines what all of the mental health diagnoses are, some of the causes of them, and what the criteria are. For PTSD, there's 3 things that have had to have happened for you to develop PTSD. You experienced something, you witnessed another person go through it, or you vicariously heard that experience happen repeatedly to where you became traumatized as a byproduct.
Yeah.
Number 2 and number 3 are happening on a daily basis. And for many people, they're experiencing all 3. So they are being traumatized in their own homes or their relationships or whatever the case may be. They are actively witnessing violence on their feeds. So they are vicariously seeing other people experience these horrific tragedies. And then number 3, we're consistently hearing about it and being bombarded with it.
Yeah.
Of course, we're all overwhelmed. Of course, we're all triggered. Of course, we're all terrified. These are scary times. And the reality is that it's only going to get worse. And we are pro technology here, but with everything happening with AI, there's going to be a lot of scary stuff that comes out. A lot of the videos and the photos and the content that are going to be able to be made. And it's getting very, very hyper real to where you don't know what's AI and what's real. That is scary. So, Amelia, as we start to kind of turn the corner before we wrap up, what actually can people do? So no, we do not suggest burying your head in the sand. We do not suggest, well, just turn your phone off and turn off notifications and it'll be fine. Like, yes, those are components, but you can't live in a cave We have to be
No.
in the world. So
Yeah.
being in the world, what do people do? How do we help ourselves to feel safe and get a semblance of certainty when things feel as unsafe as they do, and when we feel as uncertain as we do?
Yeah. So step number one, I want to give a shout out to the community of Evolve builders who are actually ensuring that either weekly or bi-weekly they have a safe space at Evolve where they are able to actually process what is happening in the world. And so the first step that I would say, if you are someone that does not have a therapist or a coach that has the ability to handle your storytelling of what you're going through in this time right now, you are leaving massive opportunity on your nervous system. And you are leaving your nervous system massively exposed to never processing what you're experiencing. And why I say that as step number one is making sure that you have a safe space to actually process what's happening in your world right now. Is it is shown again and again and again, scientifically, non-scientifically, but in incredible ways. It's trauma is not necessarily what just happens to you. It is what happens inside of you and who you have to process that with. So you and I, Bianca and I, could go through the same experience. And if she has someone to talk to about it, she's going to be exponentially better off than if I didn't have someone, a therapist or coach, or someone an hour a week to talk to about my experiences. That level of suppression then seeps into my every single cell. And that inherently is decreasing my longevity. It's contributing to inflammation in my body. It then starts to predispose me to exceptional risk of chronic diseases. And so that's step number one. So with my clients, I'm really making sure that I really celebrate the fact that out of everyone in their life, they are the most willing and the most courageous to have a safe space to talk to someone they trust who is unbiased and who is literally doing everything that they can to make sure that that is the most sacred space for that person. So celebrating them has been my number one thing as of late. And I know a lot of people have a hard time being celebrated for that because they're like, yeah, well, this is like just important. But when you look at the statistics, there are far too few people who have a therapist. There are far few people who have a coach. There are even fewer people who have both. And when you think about that on the scale of what I just said about trauma, we are literally, by not having someone once a week that we talk to, we are literally hurting our nervous systems by not having that investment already in our daily or weekly rhythm. Mm-hmm. And so that's number one. If you do not right now already have a therapist, please, I implore you to go hire someone that has dedicated their life to that mastery of work, because we cannot, as a community, rebuild this future or even give our future a bright shot if we have nervous systems that are in just constant fight or flight and in fear. And when nothing feels certain and when everything feels unsafe, you never learn how to cultivate internal safety amongst the chaos, which is resilience, by the way. So that's a huge gym, a mental gym, an emotional gym that very few people are getting into, which is why we have bigger flames around what is happening right now, because everyone's so trigger happy, if you will, unconsciously. So that's number one. Number two, I talked about nervous system manicuring, and this is something that I keep going back to with clients. We all know how powerful breath work, quote unquote, is. But I really am starting to not believe that that's actually fully true, because so few people actually meditate. So few people actually practice any sort of breath work in their daily routines. And why I say that is because the breath is the entryway to our nervous system. You can literally do different breathing patterns and calm your nervous system down. A calmer or calmed down nervous system doesn't inherently all of a sudden flick the light on and have you feel inherently safe. But over time and through practice and through a breathwork based practice, it does. It absolutely does, because that is attached to the vagus nerve, which then helps to influence your perception of what's happening around you and your level of control in those areas of unsafety. So breath work is one of the things that I am actively returning my clients to. And again, I know it might sound entry level, but trust me, it's not. It is far beyond that. Go ahead.
It sounds entry level, but if that were the case, then why are you so afraid to do it?
Yeah. And then the third thing that I am really making sure that clients of mine do have is a quote unquote social gym that is that allows them to disconnect from the hypervigilance that they're experiencing. So what that really looks like for one client, she's working on building a community in her Pilates classes. For another client, that looks like building a men's group that does golf together, and not the quote unquote typical golf and bullshit, but like an actual very intentional man's group to golf and calm and decompress. I have other clients that are focusing in on community and getting involved with local community efforts, because one of the biggest things that does is to help combat this sense of overwhelming helplessness that with what we're going through and what we're experiencing, many clients are citing that they're experiencing at a deep level, and collective grief. And when we have social support systems, or if we don't, we are injecting ourselves into communities to help not feel alone and not feel helpless, and hear from other people like, oh, what are they doing? Or, oh, what is that person? Oh, okay. We actually can start to build our own ecosystem, if you will, that helps to do 1 and 2 that I mentioned before. So Bianca, I know I have taken a lot of the time in this mic. I want to hear from you too.
I'm glad you
I want our
did.
listeners to hear from you.
I'm glad you did. As cheesy as this is going to sound, we all need each other so much. And not the BS social interactions that so many people have. We need each other at the heart level. We need each other at the mind level. We need each other at the safe physiological and emotional level. So few people have that. I was on a call with a client this morning, and if anyone saw him, they would think that he had, life at the palm of his hands. He's a very attractive man, very fit, tall, makes 6 figures at his job. He has 2 dogs. He's the life of the party. Everyone would think that he was on top of the world. And what nobody sees is that he's deeply miserable. He's never felt loved. He can only be the life of the party because he can't build an emotional connection to save his life. And the only real social interaction that he gets are first dates, because he can't take it any further than that. Because he has a massive abandonment wound from when he was a child and his mom abandoned him. And he and I were having a conversation, and I said, "You've never been loved, have you?" And he's like, "Honestly, I don't even know what that means. No, I've never felt it." We all need each other. We need safe spaces with and for and from and to each other. And I do not believe that that's possible unless you are making and taking the concerted effort to put yourself into a good, well-grounded space. That doesn't mean you're going to be happy all the time. That doesn't mean you're going to be positive, because toxic positivity is toxic. We did an IG live about this the day that we're recording this. We did it yesterday about real resilience versus toxic positivity. We need each other, and we need each other to be resilient. And that means we have to do it for ourselves first. I know therapy and coaching is terrifying for the majority of people. I know from a personal level and from the professional level, being on the opposite end of the table, how scary it is. I also know how brutal it is when you're laying on the couch, crying yourself into a stupor because of how overwhelmed and scared and emotionally charged you feel, or feeling like you have to numb out and escape, or like you're so overwhelmed and angry and frustrated that anger ends up coming out on other people unintentionally. We know. And those are all byproducts of what we are talking about, this lack of safety, this lack of attunement, this lack of groundedness and interconnection, and then safe outer connections. Do yourself a massive favor. Work through that fear and get help. Not because you're weak, but because this world needs more resilient people so we can help each other get through this. That is my final sentiment. Unless you have another one, let's do episode suggestions.
My episode suggestion is 291, Motivation Monday, 3 simple conflict resolution tools you need to know.
Motivation Monday, oh my goodness, that was a while ago. 473, the tools you need to stop emotionally numbing.
Nice. Beautiful.
Thank you for
your sentiment. And thank you everyone who joined us for this episode. I know emotionally a little bit lower than maybe some of us would have liked. And I also hope that it helped you move some of the heavy emotion through you, because you're not alone in this stuff. And I know you know that intellectually, but emotionally, my question is, are you with someone who can help you move through that which you're emotionally holding on to? And that is so powerful. So thank you for joining us in this episode. Thank you for your continued interest in the holistic science of mental health and mental wellness. Let's work together to be mentally well, emotionally well, spiritually well, physically well, all well-rounded well. It takes a village, that is for sure. And we're celebrating this evolved community for being on this journey. Thanks for listening,
everybody.
Guys. Bye.